As you know, this is The Measure of an Episode. As you may not know, if this is the very first time you're listening to it, it is our continuing mission to explore what makes Star Trek proper Star Trek and not just good, bad, or mediocre television. This is episode 42, which is actually where we will be discussing the meaning of life, the universe, and everything.
Oh, lucky you, listener.
So, Paul. Hello, Paul.
Hi, Jonathan.
I didn't see you there.
The criteria by which we judge these episodes is three criteria. Number one, is there an expression of science fiction in the episode? Or is it, if it doesn't, then... Again, I fluster myself because I'm trying not to use any weaving or just cloth making.
Any textile references.
Yeah. I fail every single time. But is there science fiction in the episode? True science fiction. And number three, is there some element of morality, whether through character or through plot, that is addressed or expressed throughout the episode?
I'm Jonathan, and today we watched Alter Ego, episode 14 of season 3 of Voyager. And the blurb states, Harry Kim finds himself in love with Morena, a character from Neelix's Polynesian Resort holodeck program. I'm going to say this person watched the cold open.
Because there's no mention of the nebula, which I would imagine it seems like it would play, because it does play. It's not totally separated B plot. It is actually part of the A plot. They kind of converge at a certain point. Mm-hmm. So if I were writing a blurb, I would put the nebula in there, just casually mentioning it.
And I mean, would you say anything about Tuvok? Because I would put something about how Harry Kim and Tuvok have like not a lover's quarrel, but battle over the same holodeck woman.
If it is a lover's quarrel, it's way more interesting of an episode. It automatically makes it 100% better. The jealousy thing, the quarrel between the ensign and Tuvok is felt disingenuous because we didn't spend a lot of time with the ensign and Morena. When we get actually to the holodeck and the ensign is introducing Tuvok to Morena, I was expecting there to be more of a flirtation happening, as though that they were kind of a couple already, and the ensign was not willing to admit that, that it was not a real relationship. But that's not what it was. It was one of those unrequited love type of things.
Right.
And so I didn't really, it didn't follow through for me. And so this whole thing with the ensign I didn't care. And it didn't really pose any plot line problems. It was just sort of this nagging thing at the side of the plot.
It didn't sit right with me either, and I think that you just hit the nail on the head. Why? It was just so weird that he had this cry. Well, and it was also kind of weird because it did turn out to be an alien, spoiler alert.
That was actually a surprise for me. It was not just I've fallen in love with a holodeck character thing, right?
Right, sure. But there wasn't, kind of what you said, there wasn't anything with Kim trying to, I don't know, it was just handled so strangely because yes, he had a crush on this holodeck program that turned out to be a real thing, but he thought it was a machine, and so he was just trying to get over his emotions instead of I thought my immediate thought 7 minutes into the episode when Tuvok was like, "Here, I can help you with this." He's like, "Computer, Control, Alt, Delete."
Which is kind of a badass move when he did that. I liked it.
Right? Yeah, he's like problem solved. I'm no longer interested in her, and you can't see her anymore. I win.
Yeah. So, okay, I think that what the nice thing about this episode is it gives us very good insight as to the ensign and Tuvok. Number one, it shows that the ensign is a small child when it comes to emotions and relationships in general.
And this is why he was never promoted.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the reasons. One of the many reasons. Because he goes to Tuvok, and Tuvok says, it basically explains to him through the course of 2 or 3 scenes what it's like, what it means to have a crush on somebody.
Yep.
And this is news to Ensign Kim. For some reason, it's like, oh, I didn't know this is something that happened to people. I'm probably almost 30 years old, and this has never happened to me before. It just seemed like, oh, who is this person then?
Right.
That he didn't go to high school and didn't have a crush on somebody that was unrequited. Like what male does that not happen to?
Yeah.
Or female. I mean, for that matter. But also another thing about Tuvok is that I have a feeling he is the worst Vulcan ever. I think because he's portrayed as practicing meditation all the time, and he's written in such a way where he is supposed to be emotionally removed because he's a Vulcan, because that's what he practices to do.
Right.
Yet he's constantly annoyed or irritated with everybody. It's everything that anybody ever does. He's just like rolling his eyes in a Vulcan way, I guess. He seems to always be on edge and definitely not neutral. And I don't know if that's on purpose or if that's just an acting, like that's just the way Tim Russ plays him. But if it's not, then he's the worst Vulcan. He should not be, like, he should have been kicked out of Vulcan a long time ago because he's bad at it.
Well, it could be that that's the best that he can do, given the fact that he's working under someone who, threw him however many light years out there and is like, hey, you're now a security officer on my bridge. So kind of speaking to that, like his sarcasm, or not even sarcasm, his condescension, like that's really what it was at the beginning when Kim comes in to ask him about helping him control his emotions, and Tuvok says, what's the problem? And he's like, I'm in love with someone else. And Tuvok goes, yeah, I figured that out. Why are you trying to control it?
Like I said, he's very bad at hiding his emotion. Not hiding, or just what do Vulcans do? Are they hiding it? Are they suppressing it?
Yeah, they're suppressing, they're controlling. But if you asked a Vulcan, they wouldn't say, I'm suppressing my emotions. They would say, I've relieved myself of my emotions. No, I think it's that they control them. They don't give into emotional reactions or outbursts.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's kind of what he says. Like we don't have emotional reactions. We look at our emotions as just another part of our body, and we objectively we analyze them and resolve and or control them.
Yeah, you're right.
And so this episode is actually really interesting in that respect because it actually delves into how they control their emotions and the names that they give very obvious emotions that anyone has experienced ever in their entire lives.
It's not that I necessarily mind that the ensign doesn't know what these things are. I'm sure there are 30-year-olds who have very little experience with that. But I don't like the part where they have to take 2 or 3 scenes and 5 or 6 minutes explaining to the audience what these things are. We didn't need there to be some sort of Vulcan analog to having a crush on somebody and what you're supposed to do when that happens, which is exactly what they would tell you to do if you weren't a Vulcan, which is stop seeing her. She doesn't like you. Take a step back.
Yeah. Conversely, I did like that scene because it was kind of exactly that. Like we don't have names for those nuances, kind of like in how Greek, I think, I'm pretty sure it's Greek, maybe it's Latin, but there's 4 different words for love. Like it was just very cool that the Vulcans have analyzed emotions so much that they have names for all the different types of feelings. That's what I pulled from
it. Was good. I thought it was going to be interesting in that there was going to be some better insight or I guess just a deeper analog for having a crush on somebody and what that meant in a kind of alien way.
Sure, right.
But it wasn't. It was just a stand-in. They were just replacing crush with a Vulcan made-up word.
Right.
And it didn't go much deeper than that.
No, it really didn't.
So I wanted, that could have been a moment of science fiction that they missed or passed up.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. So,
but it wasn't.
But it wasn't. We say that a lot with this podcast.
Yes.
So the nebula explodes and
catches itself.
Yeah, I couldn't help but think this might come back later, having to do. I thought it was going to be like, the nebula caused some sort of surge and made the computer sentient or something like that. That's where I thought it was going.
Okay.
I wasn't totally wrong, but I was wrong.
Yeah.
I should have been right, but I wasn't. But it wasn't. And then Janeway proceeds to cock-block the crew from getting home once again and say, well, let's stay here and analyze this. This could be interesting.
Well,
and everybody's like, oh.
Here's what I loved about that. She's like, well, let's stay. What's the turnaround time or whatever? And they said she said, Ensign, how long will it take? He said about 2 weeks. And she's like, okay, get on it. And then B'Elanna is like, there seems to be trouble in the engineering room. And she's like, Ensign, get down there. Oh, it looks like it's going to take a little longer than 2 weeks, guys. Whoopsie.
Does no one else work on this crew of people?
Right.
Why is the lowest ranked guy in charge of everything?
Yeah, exactly. Like, It's because he has childlike emotions. He can't control himself.
I guess so.
I didn't go back and watch, but she said, I'll see you all at 8 tonight. And I couldn't remember if she jokingly said, and that's an order, or if she said something like, I expect you all there, or something like that.
I'll see all of you at Mr. Neelich's luau. I'm sure everyone will be attending.
And so that's why Tuvok showed up. He malicious obedience, essentially. He's like, all right, fine, if you want me to be there.
Passive aggressive.
Right.
Obedience.
Yeah. Well, and then I love that, I know that obviously it was the script and how it was written, but I love that the holodeck called him out on it. The alien program.
Right. Well, he does. I mean, they make a point that he's like the unemotional centered Vulcan is casually strolling through with utter contempt for everybody on the holodeck. I guess that came through. That was a good direction to say, like, you need to wear this on your face. Although it's not really much different than his normal demeanor, to be honest.
Well, yeah, but it was just it was just exactly that. It was in his demeanor, and that's why she clung to him.
It's funny because Kes kind of just shows up for literally 5 seconds.
That one scene.
She's not in the episode. She's not in the episode ever again.
So true.
We don't like paying her. She's too short.
Right. We got to figure out a way to get rid of her. Maybe by the end of this season. Is it this season? Maybe it's season 4. I don't remember.
So in this scene with the luau, we run into Janeway and Chakotay kind of walking around with each other. And Janeway is sort of not grabbing, but has Chakotay's arm.
Yes.
They're kind of walking like they're a couple. What the hell's going on here? I'm assuming this is threaded through the whole show.
Like a tapestry. Yeah.
Like a tapestry. And I don't know what we're supposed to be thinking. That are the writers, like if we were to read the one sheet on the characters of Janeway and Chakotay, is it that they're just good friends who never cross a line, or are they secretly having sex? What are they? I feel like the writers are speaking to me. I just can't understand what they're saying.
Well, no, Chakotay clearly laid that out in Shattered.
whatever that.
Yeah. Yeah, where she's like, "Hey, so how often do we do it?" And he's like, never. Well, okay.
Kind of shoots her down.
Maybe
future Chakotay will appreciate what he just did for him.
Right. Did me a solid, brother.
Gives himself a high five when he goes back to his normal timeline.
No, because nobody remembers it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's convenient.
I know.
So, okay. But then the interesting part is, so Tuvok falls in love with Morena. It's spelled such a weird way.
No, he doesn't. Remember, he explicitly says that his feelings for her are. Ensign completely misunderstands it, so he does not love her. You're wrong.
Which is BS. Yeah, it's BS. Like, he falls in love with her and doesn't know what to do about it. He probably goes and
meditates nightly, a couple times each night.
He comes out of the holodeck and just ends the program. And totally ruins all of the other people having sex with holograms in the program. Like, they just disappear. And I was like, how did he know he was the only one left in there? Or is it when Tuvok leaves, everybody leaves?
Right. Well, yeah. No, I assumed that he was the last one in there. But you're right. Like, did he do like a quick scan of the right? Did he do a quick scan of the area? Can you do that? Like, if you're not the last person, can you be the first person to leave a party and be like, computer, end program?
Yeah. Everybody's drink just disappears.
Right. The bed that they're laying on. I wonder how often that happens. Yeah, like if you're up in a tree, like
this goes to the weirdness of a holodeck. Like, when you're running full speed in a holodeck and somebody ends the program, do you just collide with a wall? Or how, like, when you are actually in movement that's greater than the bounds of the holodeck, what happens? How is that happening?
Right.
Are treadmills materializing underneath you and you just can't tell?
I think, I do think that's actually what's happening. And then it does just through optical illusions and forced perspective. Like, it makes it look like you're getting farther and farther away from someone when in reality you're just in the opposite corner.
I feel like they've never addressed that. They've never talked about or shown in some way when the holodeck was malfunctioning, people just running into walls and stuff like that. With it being explained that there's something wrong with the treadmill.
Right. Well, I mean, it's a treadmill hologram, like in the same way that the whole thing is a hologram.
Right. Yeah. Good call.
Which I actually didn't even think of until just now. I was trying to think about like how the ground would rotate based on the fact that we've seen it, but that makes the most amount of sense. Like and you're right. Like, so if the program was malfunctioning in such a way that the treadmills weren't showing up, in the illusion, then yeah, you'd be walking through the terrain and then just suddenly hit like the
hit a wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame in track and field programs.
Yeah.
Big shame.
Whenever there's a glitch like that, there've been so many injuries.
Okay, so the nebula starts acting up, and so it starts affecting Voyager. And Voyager wants to leave, but it can't. And so there's this trope in Star Trek that happens where something happens on the bridge, and the captain calls down and says, "What's going on?" And they automatically know what's going on. "I'm working on it, Captain. Give us 5 minutes." And so there must be an open line from the bridge to engineering at all times during normal bridge operations. That's the only way to explain that. Because I'm assuming that 3.5 seconds after a malfunction happens, that engineering may or may not know about that, especially if it's confined to the bridge. But the only way to explain it is that, okay, there's an open line that's happening at all times for the ship's operations. I don't know, that was interesting to me to see an expression of that, because I guess it wasn't. I guess I'm filling in the gaps here, but you know what I mean. Like it's an interesting look into how the normal day-to-day on a starship might operate. That yes, you would want to be apprised of everything that's happening on the bridge if you're in engineering,
Right.
You would need to be.
So does she? Right. So she says, "Let's get out of here," and then they don't, and then she just says, "What's going on?"
Captain, propulsion is not responding.
Bridge to engineering. Milana, what's going on?
I'm not sure, Captain. We're trying to track the problem now.
What it could also be that on all of the monitors there is, like anything that's commanded on the bridge of movement, something pops up on the monitor saying, like Captain has requested going to whatever, like warp 3 or impulse or reverse engines or something. And so they know what is supposed to be happening, and they can continue working, and they can just see it out of the corner of their eye. And that way, if it doesn't work, they can do a quick diagnostic to see why.
Well, I guess, but that would slow things down. And also, you're not always in front of a monitor, or at least you're not always in front of that monitor. And so it would make more sense just to have an audio feed, so you could tell exactly what was happening. And it wasn't a two-way feed, so they could talk and do their own business. But you could always hear if there's something going wrong. It would be obvious, I guess. I don't know. It would make sense. I don't know if that's how it works on aircraft carriers or something, or ships or submarines or something like that. But that's really the only way to explain why B'Elanna would know what the hell was going on immediately.
But I feel like it would just become background noise. If you would hear everything that was happening on the bridge all the time, you wouldn't notice the commands of any direction. So it could be that, kind of like Alexa, how Alexa is always passively listening, and when a command is given from the captain, that's when the audio turns on in engineering.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. That there would be contextual feedback from the bridge. That was audio.
Yeah.
They wouldn't get Janeway talking, bitching about her coffee again.
Right.
But if there's a command, it would be made clear to engineering and whoever else, other important parts of the ship.
Yeah. There we go. We figured it out.
Yeah.
That's why we
closed.
do this podcast. That's why we did this podcast. We're done.
We are.
It took us 42 episodes. There's our answer to life, the universe, and everything. Passive listening.
It's 42. Bad things happen in holodecks all the time.
Yes.
That are deleterious to the ship. Happens all the time.
Yes.
In every single show, except maybe TOS, in which there wasn't a holodeck.
Which there might have been. We'll talk about that.
Okay. But, so you'd think that by the time they made the Starship Voyager, whose number I don't know. Does it have a number? Doesn't
yes. Well, we saw it. We saw it in Timeless. We just saw it in the last episode of Voyager.
I don't remember. I don't know. Does it say Voyager on it? Does it actually say Voyager? Or does
no,
it
gave its number. And that's how we knew it was Voyager. Almost just hung up on you.
Sorry, God. So anyway, you'd think that they would make the holodecks ejectable, right? Just like they can eject a warp core. Because it seems to be a big weak point.
Right.
For every single ship that has one of these things, make it ejectable, just so you can get rid of it immediately.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess that's the other thing, too. Like, I wonder if there's ever been an actual fatality or catastrophe that hasn't been fixable. Because I feel like with, first off, the number of episodes that have had problems to the number of episodes that haven't, I feel like it's negligible. So the problems aren't worth having a kill switch for on each holodeck. And it could also be that the holodecks themselves are so expensive to manufacture that, they're only allowed on space stations and starships. They're not actually on Earth anywhere, or on any planets. because you can kind of go to those places. They don't want to get rid of them. There should be a kill switch that shuts it off from the main computer of the Enterprise or of the starship, whatever it is.
The crucial element of a starship is the warp core, and that is ejectable because it could severely harm or blow up the ship.
Correct.
But I like the idea that the holodeck could be equally as detrimental to the ship, just in different ways. Because how many times in Next Gen, in DS9, in Voyager, does I think there's a two-parter episode in Voyager where an alien military race takes over Voyager to use their holodecks, and they keep killing people inside the holodeck.
Mm-hmm.
I think that happens. And so serious time and resources, it may not blow up the ship, but serious time and resources are spent fixing problems that the holodeck has created. It's almost like smoking, right? It's almost like an addiction where, yes, it doesn't necessarily kill you when you interact with it, but it has all these peripheral problems that it causes that do more damage in the long term than just, playing with a gun or something like that.
Right. But yeah, so that's kind of what I was saying. Like, I wonder if that they could have a kill switch that shuts it off from the rest of the network on the starship. So
right, and but see, you would think that would be true for every system where it's all modular. So if something shuts, but this happens all the time where,
right,
sir, we're careening toward this brick wall, but I can't turn it off. I can't turn off the warp core. And that happens. That's sort of a writing crutch. I think that happens because they need to put the people in peril.
The brakes stopped working because the AC is on high.
Yeah, and I can't eject them. Don't eject the brakes.
Well, yeah, the AC is stuck on high, so we can't eject the accelerator.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you'd think that would be a big part of the design, is if something is not working and possibly causing harm, that they could just turn it off. They wouldn't have to necessarily even eject it. Just totally isolate it computorally from the rest of the system. But they don't do that.
Right.
I guess that would make it too easy to get out of problems, making for a bad television.
Right. Well, yeah, I wonder. But I mean, having something that sensible would also allow the writers to be more creative, kind of like Aquiel. The fact that a tricorder can read everything, they really had to stretch and figure out how they could create a murder mystery where a tricorder would not be able to figure it out. And to have something where the problem can be isolated, you could then have two separate conflicts throughout the episode that were like legitimate conflicts. You could have an external conflict happening externally, and you could have an internal conflict that's happening in that isolated room, and they have to figure out what the problem is, and like every once in a while, maybe once a season or, like once every other season or something, have an episode where the problem managed to work around the kill switch and they can't shut it off and it's spreading through the rest of the ship. And that's what and that's where they have to figure out how to stop it. But yeah, I mean, it's, to go completely in a different direction. It's kind of like the restrictions that Deadpool had on its budget. There was supposed to be a huge gunfight at the end, but they didn't have the budget for it. And so in very clearly Deadpool fashion, he left all of his guns in the trunk of the taxi. And so he didn't have any of the weapons that he was supposed to. And that's why the fight at the end was so limited.
Right.
And so kind of this, like, it forces you to be creative when you have these things, when you have these restrictions thrown on you.
Right. And I guess there's only so far you can go with that stuff. You're in a sense almost creating a MacGuffin when the crux of a plot is based on some sort of malfunction with the computer or the ship, where, okay, we're going to give you just enough to get you over the hump of suspension of disbelief. And then that's all we're going to give you, because it would be almost, I'm surprised we're never going to say this, too much science fiction if you're just focusing on the problem itself and not getting to the interesting part of the plot. That you have to abandon the explanation at a certain point. Sometimes they do a good job with that. Other times, I think particularly in Voyager, they kind of just talk their way through it and they're like not creative at all with the tech stuff.
See, I don't think so. Like, I think that it would, I feel like it would be really interesting if, they were able to isolate the holodeck. And the holodeck becomes, now the problem is in the holodeck, and either the people in there are stuck in there, kind of like a handful of datas or a fistful of datas, or they're able to go in and out to relay what the problem is because, they can't have a connection in any way. So there's no communication with that room. Or the problem is in engineering and, they have to, they can't shut down engineering as a whole because that's the engine, but they could shut down specific areas and isolate it and try to figure out what the problem is while there's another conflict going on. So the ship doesn't have to be always dead in the water or having something malfunctioning throughout the ship, because the replicator stopped working.
Right. I think they always try and match up a catastrophe or a malfunction of some kind with a ticking clock. I think that's the problem, is that in order to give this sense of urgency and stakes, the only way they know how to do that is by saying, "Sir, we're careening toward a brick wall and the accelerator's stuck. We don't know what to do." And I feel like that's where they would transition into full-on science fiction, is if the problem was a dire problem, but not an immediate one. That they have to fix something and it could be really bad, but it's not going to be bad in 30 seconds or 5 minutes.
Right.
And that seems to be the difference.
I feel like the ticking clock is almost it's a handicap. I mean, yes, it is. It's a handicap and it's a crutch. But the problem with it is we know that the actors are going to be fine. That's the whole point of the show. Nobody on the show is going to die. So when they have those,
we can hope.
Right. I mean, at least for me, when I watch shows, the stakes always have to be external because otherwise there's not as much tension. There's not, I'm not as gripped to the episode because I'm just wondering, how are they going to get out of it? Not if they are going to get out of it. And, so it's just especially on Voyager, it's what's the Deus Ex Machina that they're going to pull out of the replicator.
Right. I feel like they miss out on a lot of science fiction fun when they have to make it the accelerator stuck and we're careening toward a brick wall. What do we do?
Right. Or that the alien holodeck has taken over all of the functions of the ship.
Well, are Starfleet ships they have the worst? Are they using an outdated Norton security for viruses? I mean, why is this so easy to do that you can just hack any starship? It happens all the damn time. I hate that. I hate that that's the thing, that it's just, I hacked into your computer and I looked around and I was able to basically take control of your whole ship.
Well,
how is this possible?
Right. Well, and I think to a certain extent you are right. They are using an outdated one because it typically happens with advanced technology, advanced societies, because that's what happened here. This society, this culture is so advanced that they can control a reverse nebula that's only supposed to last for a couple of minutes, and this one's been lasting for hundreds of years.
I guess that's true. That's true. So they're a super advanced society.
This one
That's
is,
a good point.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's on a case-by-case basis.
I'm going to jump to the end here. So I hated the ending of this episode, both the denouement and the actual ending with the alien. And it was so boring. I was so disappointed that it was an actual alien. I mean, it was cool that it was not what I was expecting. I appreciated the unexpectedness of it, but I wanted it to be something more interesting. And this scene is sort of what put me, or I guess didn't put me over the ledge for it being a proper episode, because I felt like the whole idea, it's a lonely alien who is manipulating because she doesn't know she's lonely, but she's expressing herself like she's lonely and doesn't know it. I understood it. I actually rather liked the moment where she says, "And what will you do to you?" As he's beaming off the thing, he saved the world, but he's beaming off, and what will you do? How will you not be alone? And he kind of turns to her as he's being. That was a nice moment, but I felt like, why can't we do something more creative? For example, I actually thought that maybe it would go this way because the nebula resembled a brain so much, like the way those strands were happening. They look like neural connections. What do they call those in a brain where there's a word for those things? Synapses, yeah. So it looked like that. And I thought it would be cool. Okay, so what if this nebula has in some way developed some sort of primordial consciousness by making these connections? And it was affecting Voyager in a way, subconsciously, I guess, like it was a baby, as though it might cling to its mother in a way. Wouldn't that have been way more interesting as a way to? I mean, I guess they kind of did that in Next Gen a little bit. There was an episode where they encounter kind of an organic ship.
Yes,
that's totally organic. It's
that's
like
right.
A beast. But I wanted it to be something like that, where it was, we've encountered a space brain. We're trying to communicate with it, and it's trying to communicate with us. And it managed to do that through our holodeck.
Right.
We can talk to this alien through our holodeck. I thought that would have been more interesting to me than it just being a lonely alien. And would it be perhaps a moral quandary to say, okay, well, this space brain has imprinted itself onto us. If we leave, we're basically tearing a baby away from its mother. And so what do we do? And of course, Janeway would opt to stay.
Right.
And stay there for as many years as it takes to save the space brain.
I would not call this a good episode, but I think that it was proper Star Trek. I think that the moral issues were with Kim and Tuvok, and like whether or not they overstepped the boundaries, and with the ethical side of things on at the very end there, of him having to explain like you need to let me go.
Although I think that if Tuvok said, "Sir, she wants me to stay, or else she's going to blow up Voyager," and Janeway says, "Okay, we will wait for you as long as it takes."
Yeah, she would.
Yeah, of course she would. I will say that they kind of swung and missed in the denouement. So the ensign and Tuvok are playing chess, whatever. Yeah, and so, they kind of they make up.
Something like that.
Somebody comes, a hologram says, "May I join you?" And they kind of just both say no, and then Tuvok says, "Well, thank you for asking," and then that's the end of it. And they smile at each other. I'm like, what? Are they going for comedy here? I felt like the comedic ending was when the hologram says, "May I join you?" They both forcefully say no.
Right.
And then they smile at each other, kind of outlining, number one, that they're not getting into that again, that they're friends again, and number two, that holograms aren't people and you can be rude to them and it's okay.
That's true. Holograms are not people. A guide.
Yeah. It'd be funny if Tuvok gave that book to Ensign Kim as a present.
So you want to date a holodeck? Don't.
He opens up the front cover and it says "To Geordi." It's like a used book that he got at the Starfleet library.
Speaking of referencing, they did reference the Sherlock Moriarty episode in this one.
That's right. Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
It wasn't. I thought that they were just going to make a mild reference when they said this has happened before.
Right.
But they actually talked about Next Gen.
Yeah.
Something doesn't really happen that often.
They also had a cameo in the last one we watched. And
that's true.
The last little trivia note that I had, and we've talked about this before, and it was definitely a little bit more apparent this time around, just in his tone. Ensign Kim sounded like old Ensign from the last episode, Timeless, because he had a flu while he was filming. And so,
I was wondering about, he did sound like, especially when it was Tuvok and Kim in the turbo lift.
Right.
That specific scene made it seem like he was not feeling very well. Yeah.
Well, and just in every scene, like when he was talking, he kind of had this like gruffy, like.
Yeah.
He just sounded like a few pitches lower than he normally does.
Yeah, that's true. He wasn't his normal 30-year-old chilled child self.
But then to go back to the ending, what I took from it was that Tuvok was trying to be more considerate of other people's feelings, and that's what but thank you for asking. But I like your idea that they both like kind of realize that, holodecks are not people, and so you can be as rude as you want to them.
Yeah. Trying to workshop that out of their system a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
So not a genuine, not a proper Star Trek episode.
Oh, see,
but you're saying
I say yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Some dissent.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, just because there was the ethical side of things. Like, should Tuvok have even tried to continue anything with Milena? Which he didn't. Like, he deleted her program, and then she continued to pursue him. But then also at the end of it, where she was saying you could stay, and he's like, yeah, that's not a bad proposal. I can't. I've got too many obligations outside of this.
Well, especially since the second that she released Voyager from her grips technologically, he should have just shot her dead.
Right.
like you can't keep doing this to people, so I'm just going to do everybody else in the universe a favor and kill you. But he took the time and took the moral stance of maybe I can offer some assistance to this person who is clearly hurting.
Right. Yeah. Go back home. Like see your family, see your people. Yeah. So That was the case for me that tipped it over into the yes.
If it had been a space brain, I probably would have been yes. But it wasn't. It wasn't a space brain.
So you're still sticking with no?
I'm sticking with no.
All right.
I got to stay with no.
All right.
There wasn't enough technology in it, or science fiction. Just didn't fill that. Didn't fill that hole.
An alien taking over a holodeck avatar and controlling the ship was not sci-fi enough.
It was just impersonation. I mean, it's just an impersonation. It's just a fancy way of saying that to me. I mean, yeah, it was a holodeck, but it didn't use the holodeck other than to impersonate another person. It was a spy. It was more of a spy thing in a way.
Yeah, but the spy was 1,000 light years away or whatever.
Were they?
No, they weren't.
Actually,
were but they were. But they weren't just wearing a mask. Like, it was a fake person.
Effectively, it was her wearing a mask. She was just, as you said, as an avatar, and an avatar is just a fancy mask. Yes, you're right. Theoretically speaking, it was a science fiction concept of a holodeck meets radio transmission, that kind of thing. But I don't know. Maybe it wasn't novel enough for me. It just wasn't. I felt like it didn't feel like this was a new way to take over a starship ship.
Well, clearly not. They've referenced it before.
Exactly. I don't know. I wasn't dazzled by how it was expressed. It just wasn't. Maybe is that perhaps a third criteria, that the expression of the science fiction has to be novel in some way and not rote or trite or just old.
So for the original series and for a good chunk of TNG, like that would be they will hit the criteria just with the first two, because if the third one is it a novel approach, even if we've seen it hundreds of times since, for the original series it was the first time.
Taking it into context, of course.
Right. So for like the original series, that's almost always a given.
Maybe. I mean, there have been times that we've encountered where there just wasn't any. I guess. I mean, like when there's space clouds kind of roaming around.
Oh, yeah, like space clouds, and it turns out that it's a computer. Like, then, yeah, that. So, okay. So then, talking about that, would it have to hit all three to be proper Star Trek?
Well, so far, they've had to hit all three. It's just been much easier to hit all three.
Very true.
Let's try it on. Let's try it. We can try it on, and if it doesn't really work, it'll become like, for example, our has to have an A and a B plot. We tried that on, didn't work. So
right, okay,
we can try it if you're up for it.
Yeah,
if you agree, then maybe we can try it on for a couple of episodes. And see.
Well, yeah, let's try it till our 50th and see what happens.
Okay. God, we're gonna be so old.
But we'll almost be done with the podcast, which would be nice.
Yeah. Exactly. So you're a yes. You are a
yeah. I'm still sitting a yes. I mean, I will agree that the fact that they specifically reference the last time this happens means that this was not a novel approach, and it's a very similar thing, where it's an alien presenting itself as something else to either get into our good graces or to understand something. Are you saying it doesn't have the sci-fi, because you've seen it before, or are you saying it doesn't have sci-fi because you could rewrite the episode, just with a little flashes here and there, and you now have a non-Star Trek episode, taking place in whatever CSI or something?
Yeah, I feel like part of it is so just not novel. The way that they did it, I mean, I don't mind that they were kind of reusing a premise, but they didn't approach it with any kind of new spin.
Right.
I don't know.
So you didn't like it, so it wasn't good, but then was it proper?
Right. I feel like it's a bit glib to say there was no sci-fi in it, because obviously there is arguably science fiction in this plot line. I just don't know if I bought it, or if I felt like it wasn't enough. It wasn't focused, or what's the opposite of watered down?
Diluted?
Concentrated enough?
Right.
I mean, so you said you liked this episode.
No, I said I didn't think it was bad. I just didn't think it was good. So, I am going to place it in the bad category, just because that's the opposite of not good. But
yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's something about this episode that is truly like has a strong science fiction lean to it. And I guess the problem is, for example, hacking the Enterprise. That to me,
that's not
is
sci-fi.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, not the Enterprise, Voyager.
Right.
But hacking Voyager, that to me is on the cusp. But if they had taken it a bit further and explored that a little bit more, it's like, how is this person hacking this state-of-the-art starship. There's a difference to me of having some sort of science fiction premise that they don't explore versus exploring it.
Right.
And I feel like that is part of our criteria, that it's not just that it has science fiction in it, but that it is explored in some way.
They explored how the nebula was being maintained, and they realized that there was kind of a shield that goes up right before the explosion. And they did realize that there was another ship out there or station something, and they scanned for it and they found her, and then they had to wait for her to reveal herself before he was able to beam over there.
You're right. So you may be convincing me that I just didn't like this episode, but it happens to be a proper story. But did that happen? Like, did you feel like it was a good expression of science fiction?
Right. No. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think it was a good episode, but I think that there was enough sci-fi in the plot for it to be considered a proper episode.
But yeah, okay, maybe you've convinced me. Maybe it is a proper science fiction episode. It's just not a good one.
Right.
Okay, you convinced me.
Okay.
I'm changing my gears. Yeah.
All right. So proper, just not good.
We both agreed not a proper episode, and we both didn't like it.
Yep.
So before we figure out what we're watching next, I just wanted to beg everybody, go out, rate our podcast, leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Very helpful to us to get more listeners. And if you want to further support us, we have a Patreon page. Go check us out. Links are in the description or in the show notes. And it would very much help us out if you wouldn't mind taking a look.
All right. So what are we watching next?
Deep Space Nine, Season 4, Episode 11, Paradise Lost. A lot of paradises in Star Trek.
All right. Paradise Syndrome, Paradise Lost.
Well, there's two. So it's, at this point, a mistake. So if there's a third time, it will be a pattern. All right. Do you have the blurb?
I do.
I don't have the blurb.
Yeah. When Dominion sabotage is blamed for a planet-wide power outage, Starfleet stations troops all over Earth to prepare for an invasion.
Oh. Something might actually happen on DS9?
I know. Well, I feel like DS9, they either had, it was almost like X-Files, where they had either standalone episodes or they had episodes that moved the overall story forward, the overall plot of the Dominion and all that kind of thing. They didn't really have episodes where both of those were happening simultaneously. And, you know, like in the same way that Enterprise did with the Xindi and the just standalone conflict.
Right.
So,
yeah. Yeah, you're right.
There's only one way to find out, though. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go
find
see
out.
what we're watching. No, we did that already.
Yeah.
Let's go find out.